He walked into a bar and was never seen again. This is the story of the mysterious Brian Shaffer disappearance. There are cases that feel like puzzles, and then there are cases that feel like glitches, not unsolved in the traditional sense, but unsolved in a way that almost shouldn't be possible. Because sometimes a mystery isn't built on what we don't know. It's built on what we do know, not making sense. And the disappearance of Brian Shaffer is one of those cases. A young man walks into a crowded bar, surrounded by cameras, friends, noise, and light. And then somehow, he's just gone. No clear exit, no confirmed sighting, no explanation that fully holds up. Just a single moment where reality seems to break. Before the headlines, before the theories, before his name became part of true crime culture, Brian Shaffer was just a person in motion. He was born in 1979 and raised in Pickerington, Ohio, a suburb outside Columbus. By most accounts, his life followed a path that felt stable, predictable even. He was intelligent, focused, the kind of person who didn't just drift into a future, he worked toward it. Brian attended Ohio State University, where he was pursuing a career in medicine, not casually, not as a vague idea. This was a commitment, the kind that shapes your identity, the kind that consumes your time. People described him as thoughtful, easygoing, but not disengaged, social, but not reckless. He had a long-term girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, close friends, a family that, from the outside, seemed solid. But like a lot of people in their mid-20s, Brian was in transition. He wasn't who he used to be. He wasn't quite who he was becoming. And those in-between spaces, they can carry more weight than they appear to. The timing of his disappearance matters. Just weeks before he vanished, Brian's mother died after a long battle with cancer. That kind of loss doesn't stay contained. It doesn't sit quietly in the background of someone's life. It reshapes things, subtly at first, and then all at once. Friends would later say he was grieving, but still functioning, still going out, still showing up, still trying to move forward. But grief doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks like normalcy, with fractures you can't quite see yet. March 31st, 2006, a Friday night moving into early Saturday morning. Brian had just finished finals week, a pressure point for any medical student. There's a specific kind of relief that comes with that moment, when everything that's been building finally releases. He went out with his friend, William Clint Florence. The plan was simple: bar hopping in the University District. Nothing unusual. At some point in the night, they ended up at a place called the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a crowded, high-energy bar inside the South Campus Gateway complex. The kind of place where people move constantly, in and out, up and down, blending into each other. But what made this location different, what would later make it infamous, was its layout. The entrance funneled people through an escalator area, a controlled access point with surveillance cameras positioned nearby, which meant, in theory, something important. Anyone entering or leaving should have been seen. At around 1:55 a.m., surveillance footage captures Brian entering the bar. He's not alone. He's talking with two women he had just met. There's nothing remarkable about the interaction. He looks relaxed, present, engaged. If you didn't know what was coming, you wouldn't look twice at this moment. And that's part of what makes it so unsettling. Because this becomes the last confirmed sighting of him. Inside the bar, the night continues normally. At one point, Brian separates briefly from Clint. There's no indication this was unusual. People drift in crowded spaces. Conversations shift. But as closing time approaches, something changes. Clint and another friend leave the bar just before 2 a.m. They expect Brian to follow. He doesn't. At first, it doesn't trigger alarm. There's an assumption built into nights like this, that people will reconnect later, outside, at home, the next day. But Brian never reconnects, and this is where the case shifts, from strange to something else entirely. Despite multiple cameras covering the entrance and exit area, there is no clear footage of Brian leaving the bar, not walking out, not blending into a crowd, not slipping past in a way that can be confirmed. It's as if he walked into a space and then never walked out. The next day, when Brian doesn't answer calls, concern builds slowly. He's an adult, independent. Late nights happen. But as hours stretch into days, that concern becomes something heavier, something harder to dismiss. His father, Randy Shaffer, becomes central to what happens next. He doesn't wait passively. He pushes, speaks to media, coordinates searches. There's a persistence in the way he shows up, the kind that comes from knowing something is wrong, even without proof. Search efforts begin. The bar is re-examined. Surveillance footage is reviewed repeatedly. Investigators look for anything that could explain what happened. Alternative exits, service doors, emergency routes. And there were possibilities. Areas under construction, points where visibility wasn't perfect, but none of it led to a clear answer. No footage confirming an exit. No witnesses placing Brian outside. No physical evidence pointing in any direction. Just absence. Then there's the phone call. Months after Brian disappeared, Alexis reportedly called his phone. And for a brief moment, it rang. Not straight to voicemail, not disconnected. It rang, and then it stopped. Investigators tried to trace it, to understand where the signal came from, but nothing definitive came back. It was never replicated, never explained, and it leaves you in an uncomfortable space, because it's not enough to prove anything, but it's also not nothing. At a certain point, investigation gives way to interpretation, because when evidence runs out, people start trying to fill the gaps, and Brian Shaffer's case has more gaps than most. The simplest explanation is often the first one considered, that Brian did leave the bar, he just wasn't captured on camera. And technically, that's possible. No surveillance system is perfect. There were blind spots, timing gaps. But this explanation depends on multiple things going wrong at once. Cameras missing him, no one recognizing him, no trace of him afterward. Each piece on its own is plausible. Together, it becomes harder to hold. Another theory suggests something more intentional, that Brian chose to disappear, start over, walk away from everything. People point to the context, the loss of his mother, the pressure of medical school, the weight of expectation. But when you look closer, the theory starts to strain. He left behind his car, his wallet, his established life. There were no financial movements, no confirmed sightings, no communication, and most importantly, no preparation, because disappearing on purpose usually leaves some kind of trail, even if it's subtle. Brian's case doesn't. There are also theories about something happening inside the bar, an altercation, a confrontation that escalated quietly. But again, there's no evidence supporting it, no reports of a fight, no disturbance caught on camera, no physical trace. It's a theory that exists because it could happen, not because there's anything pointing directly to it. And then there's the reason this case stays with people, not as a formal theory, but as a feeling, because Brian's disappearance doesn't behave the way we expect it to. There's a contained environment, a documented entry, and a missing exit. It creates a kind of psychological tension that's hard to resolve. People describe it as a gap in the timeline, a break in continuity, a moment where something doesn't connect, not supernatural, but disorienting, because we rely on cause and effect. We expect actions to lead somewhere, and here they don't. Brian's father, Randy, never stopped searching. For years, he stayed visible, vocal, committed to finding answers. And then, in 2008, he died in an accident, which means the two people closest to Brian, his mother and his father, were both gone within 2 years of his disappearance. It doesn't explain anything, but it adds weight. There are thousands of missing persons cases, many with fewer answers, many with less attention, but this one lingers, not because it's the most extreme, but because it disrupts something fundamental. It challenges the idea that in a monitored modern space, someone can't just disappear. Some cases end with answers, others end with acceptance. And then there are cases like this that don't really end at all. They just pause, somewhere between what was seen and what should have been seen, between a person walking into a bar and everything that came after or didn't. If you have your own theory about what happened to Brian Shaffer, or there's a detail that stands out to you, I'd be interested to hear it. And if you want more deep dives that focus not just on the facts, but on the psychology and the culture around cases like this, let me know which story you want next. Because sometimes the most unsettling mysteries aren't the ones with the least information. They're the ones where the information doesn't fit. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.